Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Disappearances video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your newer suggestions. This one having to do with yet another very sad, very unfortunate, very tragic circumstance that involves not just the disappearance of a young boy, but also his death and then the way he was found. When I was reading this information, there's just pretty much no good news associated with it. Even after 60 plus years of this being an ongoing case, there's also very little chance that it'll ever be solved. Not only that, but because of the mysteriousness associated with this young boy, there's not even a name tied to him. But at the very least, he does have to this day many people that are still investigating things, trying to find out essentially if there's any link whatsoever to finding out not just what occurred to him, but also the identity associated with him. He goes by several names. One of them is known as the boy in the box, and then the other name is as America's Unknown Child. Again, mainly because there's no name linked to him. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the information associated with this tragic case, and then at least hopefully sometime in the future there'll be some final closure associated with him. But here's how it happened. Back in February of 1957, there in an area called Fox Chase, which is apparently a little bit north of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's where this box was located. This box was found, and in it there was this body of a young boy. He was obviously dead at that point, but the way he was found, that's what led to so much of an investigation afterward. The interesting thing though is his body was actually found not just once but twice beforehand, before it was reported in terms of what was discovered. Apparently there was a young man who found him while he was checking for some muskrat traps that he had, but he decided not to report anything to the police because apparently these traps were either illegal or they weren't supposed to be there in some manner, and so he decided to avoid essentially what discovered. But a couple of days later, that's when a college student who was also there in that area, in this case trying to make sure that there were no animals falling into some nearby animal traps, that's when he saw this box and this body as well. But he too was someone who hesitated in terms of talking to the police. According to him, it's because he didn't want to have any contact with them, but his better judgment came about, and so the next day he told the police about what happened, and then that's when the police came and saw everything. Now, as far as the way the boy and the body that was discovered, he was essentially crammed into what's considered a box that may have come from JCPenney or a similar retail store. And this is a box that would have contained something that's called a bassinet, which is almost like a small baby carriage, something along those lines. And so he was stuffed within that box, and there was obviously signs of not just some kind of malnourishment, but also something else associated with physical abuse. Very unfortunate, again, very sad when I was talking about this video earlier, because yes, but the moments before this boy died, he had apparently suffered a very large amount of abuse. Also, his hair looked to have been cut very recently. In fact, the way it was cut, it was almost like it was quick, like it was impromptu, like it was done almost to hide his identity, and signs point to it being done after he was dead because there were these clumps of hair that were surrounding his body too. So all this stuff, like all the mysteriousness and circumstances, is what the police discovered when they came across this body. And so on February 26, 1957, that's when the investigation first started, and they went full open, like full wide when it came to this investigation. Not just were the fingerprints obviously taken of the boy to try to find out who he was first, and then that may lead to other type of answers, but there was a very large mass scale investigation done. This involved something on the lines of 400,000 flyers that were created bearing, in this case, the boy's likenesses, and then that way it could be shared across all locations there and around Philadelphia. It was even included within the gas bill of the Philadelphia residents. That way, when they opened up their bill, obviously they would see this boy and the way he was pictured. And then also, there were over 200 police officers, which included recruits. So a total of about 270 that went to that crime scene. And then they spent a good time period, not just combing over it once, but also doing it multiple times, trying to see if they could find anything that would point towards any clues, any hints whatsoever as to what occurred to this boy, any suspects, and then also the identity associated with this boy. The only thing they found, though, was a man's blue corduroy cap, some kind of child's scarf, a man's white handkerchief, and there was a letter G there on the corner. And that's pretty much it, but nothing in terms of any clues that led to anywhere. And then not only that, but the police also took a post-mortem photograph. So they dressed the boy fully up after his death, of course, like they dressed him up as best as can be, and they put him into a seated position. And then they used this new photo in order to spread it around the areas, try to see and showcase, hey, this is how he might have looked like if he was alive. And then that's where the police could hope that somebody could identify this boy. Unfortunately, nothing occurred. There was nothing done ever since that time period. In fact, this case, 60 plus years, still remains unsolved to this day. No clues indicating who the boy was or is. No clues indicating who the suspects could be if there was more than one. Nothing in terms of how he came to be at that location. Even more recently, today, like in this case, 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children did an updated forensic facial reconstruction. And so they used this new image to try to decipher, not just to adding it their database to hope that that could ping any kind of results, but they used this to also spread this image and then see if anyone 60 plus years later can remember this boy. And then also there's DNA profiling that's being done as well. At one point, the boy was taken away from his grave. More on that here in a minute. And there was DNA profiling done from a tooth to try to see if there was any relatives, maybe someone else that it could be linked to, not just in a loose manner, but maybe in a more direct manner too. And then that way those relatives could help provide answers. But yes, even with all that work, all that effort, all those people, all the flyers, all those photographs, everything I just mentioned, it still remains unsolved to this day. That's why, again, he's known as America's unknown child, or as the boy in the box, because there's still so much mysteriousness surrounding him. Now, as far as some theories as to what occurred, that's pretty much all we have now is just theories. One of the more popular ones, I don't know if you call it more along the lines of a sensational one, but still one of the more popular ones is this. There was, at less than 2 miles away, a foster home. And the theory goes that somewhere along a time period, this boy was born. Maybe he was born to a woman who would be considered an unwed mother, or maybe he was born to someone else, like a father or someone that worked there in terms of a male there at that foster home who did not want him. Either way, though, that's when this boy was severely beaten or something else done that eventually caused his death. And so they wanted to make sure that either A, this was covered up, or B, nothing was tied to the foster home, and then that's when the body was disposed of. There's even another theory linked to the foster home that he died by accident, and then again, nobody wanted to have it linked to that foster home. The way that the foster home was first announced was, interestingly enough, it was done by a psychic. Apparently, a psychic was brought on board straight to that site, straight where the body was discovered. And then that's when the psychic pointed or directed someone to the foster home. That someone that went to the foster home was actually a guy by the name of Remington Bristow. And he was someone who worked at the medical examiner office at the time, back in 1960. And he must have taken this case straight to the heart. And this was a passionate case for him, because ever since then, up until the time he died in 1993, he tried as much as possible to make sure that he could find out what occurred, including, of course, information from this psychic. But that unfortunately did not lead to anything as far as any links or any kind of conclusion tied to it. Another theory, or another possible circumstance falls from this. There was a mysterious woman who went by the name of Martha, or the letter M, the initial M. And she went to the police in February of 2002, stating that it was her mother who was very abusive. She was the one that had purchased this unknown boy sometime in the past. And when that happened, her mother was also abusive to this boy, very extremely, like the physical abuse and other type of abuse of the worst kind. And so when that happened, this boy suffered through this for 2.5 years. And the way Martha has continued, she stated that at one point, the boy ended up vomiting part of his dinner, and then this, of course, made the mother so angry that she just beat this boy, pretty much slamming him to the floor as much as possible until he lost consciousness. And then when he was taking a bath afterward, by that point things were so severe that his body just couldn't take it anymore, and that's where he died. So the way that Martha continues is the boy was placed into some kind of box, and then they were placed in the trunk of a car to go to a location there in Fox Chase to be disposed of. But there's somewhere along the way there was actually a passing male motorist who saw something along the lines of what they were doing. He wanted to be able to see if he could help, thinking that they were doing something good, as opposed to obviously what was occurring. But then this Samaritan was told that no, everything is okay, and they even kept the license plate hidden as well from the Samaritan to make sure that there's no link to them. But either way, though, that's when the Samaritan left, this good-natured person, and then that's when the body was placed in the box still in that area. And then that's where Martha and him states that others eventually discovered this particular box. The only problem, though, with Martha is the fact that apparently others state that she suffers from some kind of mental illness. And then not only that, but the neighbors that were surrounding the house that Martha stated she lived in stated that no, there was nothing there in terms of a young boy that ever lived there. Also, they stated that her claims are quote-unquote ridiculous. So there's a lot of doubt associated with Martha's story. But again, that's just another theory surrounding it. There's even theories about this boy apparently being unwanted as a boy, trying to be raised as a girl, and then just other theories as well. So it just goes to show 60 plus years of history, there's been a whole gamut of different theories that people point to as to who this boy is and what led to his circumstances, but unfortunately no final conclusion, nothing that creates like a direct link to an answer. And then as far as this, at least he did get a proper burial. So apparently he was buried once in what was called a potter's field, but then in 1998 his body had to be exhumed because they wanted to extract DNA from his tooth in order to try to see again if there was more conclusive evidence that could be found. Remember I was mentioning that earlier. And so what happened afterward was his body was then given a more proper burial at a location called Ivy Hill Cemetery, which is nearby an area called Cedar Brook, Philadelphia. So if you go there today, then you'll be able to see actually a big headstone given to the boy. Not only that, but there was a large plot that was donated by the cemetery for his burial. There was a big service as well that was given at the time because everyone wanted to make sure that this poor unfortunate boy, whoever he is, they wanted to make sure that at least he would be given this big proper ceremony in terms of a funeral service. So this headstone was given. It bears the words America's Unknown Child. Again, there was a lot of people that showed up there as well. And then even to this day, the residents around that area constantly keep that headstone decorated with flowers and then also stuffed animals. So how about that? At least if anything is good associated with this tale, it's the fact that he was given this big service, and then also to this day his gravesite is very well tended and cared for. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information linked to. It's very sad, this unfortunate case involving America's Unknown Child or the boy in the box. But if anyone has any more information, anything else I might have missed, please post those comments below. Anybody from that Philadelphia area, Maybe if so, you have a chance to go to that cemetery. Again, it's called Ivy Hill Cemetery. If you go there, look for the big headstone that says America's Unknown Child, then you'll have a chance as well to pay your respects to him. But if anybody has any more personal info linked to their experience there, then please post those comments as well. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.